Joined by Gilbert Burns. And Gilbert, the last time you stepped into the apex to fight, it was for the welterweight championship of the world. But while I think that is, of course, the highest stakes of the sport, I think that the stakes for this fight are pretty high as well on your end. You're on a 2-fight losing streak against a really tough opponent in Sean Brady. Do you feel like this is the second biggest fight of your career in terms of what it actually means for your overall career?
Oh, right now is the biggest fight, So I have a lot of big fights. I have like a lot of wars, a lot of pay-per-view fights, a lot of couple main events. But yeah, the next one is always the big one. That's the biggest one, especially coming from two losses. That was the first time ever in my career. Yeah, so I have a little chip on my shoulder for this one.
And you're 38 years old. As you get older as a fighter, the fights tend to mean more because they kind of define the trajectory of your career. How do you not let the pressure of that get to you?
I don't listen to all the drama, to all the story. I'm listening to my coach, to my family, the guys that kind of around me, and they brutal honestly. So I don't need anything extra than these guys, and I think age is just a number, and I'm keeping up with these high level guys at my gym, and then I take care of myself. I don't drink. I don't use any type of drugs. I don't go out. So I'm pretty healthy, So only injuries that I have is from training, from fighting. Other than that, I'm super, super healthy. So I still have a lot of fight in me. And then that's another thing that I want to show up on Saturday. People kind of like count me out a little bit, but we'll see Saturday night.
Yeah, if Bilal Muhammad listened to that kind of talk, he wouldn't be champion right now. There was always this demarcation line at 35 years of age. Once you hit 35 at 170 pounds or less, I think he's the only guy in history to win a championship at that age in those weight classes against a reigning champion. So I think that he kind of proves that stat, while it does hold water, it's kind of trending the other way now with older fighters having a longer career.
Yeah, he did. He did great. Guys show up, was there in enemy territory, and did what he did the way he did. He looked good, and I like that too. That he still proved like people wrong. It's not. If you're feeling good, if you're healthy, you start freaking Glover Teixeira 42. We see a couple other guys doing amazing things. DC fought until he was 40 something. We saw Randy Couture. We saw so many guys. I still think I'm a pretty good fighter. I still have a lot of fighting in me.
When you watch a fight like that, and I've always thought this, I always thought you would match up really well against Leon Edwards. Like I think that you do very very similar things to Bilal in terms of how you approach fights with pressure, with utilizing the grappling. Like I feel you versus Leon Edwards would have been a very favorable matchup for you. I still feel like if you win this weekend, that's the fight that makes the most sense in my opinion in the division.
Yeah, why you messing up my call outs and my next step? That's the thing, So for sure, I gotta pay respect to Sean Bird. He's the guy in front of me. But I'm gonna beat him Saturday night, and Leon Edwards is one of the names that I'm looking forward to fight next. Leon, everyone that is on top. Especially those guys that don't fight much. Leon, Kobe, Kamaru. Those are the three fighters that I have my eyes on after I beat Sean Brady.
Yeah, you mentioned Kamaru. How often do you see him? Because he's still training, I think, kind of primarily in South Florida when he's not in fight camp. So do you see Kamaru very often? Like, do you guys still talk and train together and things
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, we still talk. I see him in Florida a lot. He's not. He kind of trained there. He's bouncing around a little bit. He trains there, but he goes to Colorado still. Does a little bit of his own thing. But if he was at Kill Cliff like all day, 100%, that fight would be out of the place. But he's not there. It's kind of like bouncing here and there. So yeah, I was still fighting him. Why not?
Do you still get rounds with him in the gym?
Not lately, not lately, because I don't know. I feel that we might cross paths again, so I'm not doing. But we did maybe before my last fight. We did a little bit.
Your gym just must be the absolute craziest place to train for somebody who's 170 or 185 pounds. Like the list of people that train at your gym and people that just come and do their camps there, it's just like an absolute shark tank. I imagine when you're driving into the gym, well, I'm sure you're excited to get to work. It's probably like that's the thing that I think might trend you towards retirement at an earlier age is having to train with all of these killers day in and day out.
No, and we have a lot of guys that are not even famous. We have a lot of guys that like they coming up. We have that guy Nikita, Koshin Nikita, he fought LFA. He might be fighting the contender series. The guy's 155, but he's a freaking monster. Helped me a lot for this fight. And another guy too, like sometimes even the 55ers, they big, you know. They when they out of camp, we have a couple guys there. We have so many fighters there. Tyler Ray is the one that helped me a lot for this fight, but we got Jason Jackson, Delano Taylor, those guys at PFL Bellator. We have Logan Storley, and then if I keep saying, I'm going to keep saying on and on and on because then we got so many other fighters right there. Vicente Luque, yeah, but it's not easy. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, wow, what a profession. I still love what I do, but sometimes it's hard against those high level fighters. So that's why I still fight. I still have a lot of fight on me. If I can keep up with these guys at the gym doing what I'm doing, yeah, I still have a lot of fight in me.
All right, you mentioned Jason Jackson and Vicente Luque, and what they have in common is they were both on the Ultimate Fighter season, where it was the Black Zillions against the American Top Team. Now, American Top Team is still down the road, but you and Moicano do a podcast together now. These are rival gyms, so is that feud now squashed because you guys have the podcast? Like, are you and Moicano now like the olive branch between American Top Team and Kill Cliff FC because the two of you are buddies now?
I think so. I have a lot of friends in there. Pantoja is a very good friend of mine. Marcos Almeida Bochecha is a good friend of mine too. Sapato, Carlos Jr., Antonio Carlos Jr. is a good friend of mine too. Tiago Santos Marreta is a good friend of mine too. A couple coaches there, good friends too. Everton, the strength conditioning coach, is a good friend of mine. Gabriel Pahumpa. I have a lot of friends in that Moicano, so yeah, I don't have a lot of. We had a beef back in the days, you know, when Camaro was full time Black Zillions. When we did the tough was a little bit of a rivalry. Now we still a little bit way smaller than it was just because the amateur fighters, the upcoming fighters, they fight each other all the time. But he's way more on respectful way, you know, like he's not the bad blood that used to be doing tough. He's not like that anymore. And I have so many friends. That's the Brazilians there too. A couple Russians there are my friends. So I'm kind of like I don't have that rivalry because I have a lot of friends in there. But I think a couple guys here and there still have a little bit.
How long have you known Moicano for?
Wow, I know Moicano for. I know him when I first time I saw him, he was fighting in Brazil when we tried to get on the second the Ultimate Fighter Brazil. We both didn't got there, but we tried both to get there. That's when I started to see. Boy, that was a long time ago, like over 10 years, maybe more than that. Yeah.
All right, so before his English got good, this is what I'm curious about Moicano. Was he always this weird? He's a weird guy, like which is what I love about the guy. But was he when he only spoke Portuguese and you communicated with him in your native tongue? Was he just as strange back then as he is now?
He's a little crazy. He's funny. He's awkward. You don't know what to expect. Even doing the podcast, sometimes we cool, we don't, and then out of nowhere he asks a crazy question. He does something. He's a character. He's a funny dude.
So he was always like this, like even before he started
Always,
speaking English.
always like that. Crazy. So I'm so glad that he speaks English, and even Pereira. You know, that guy is kind of like not like that, but he's a character too. I was so him and Oliveira. I would love to have this guy speaking English so everybody would literally kind of see the personality because they kind of their characters. They funny, so that would be cool if they could speak English.
Well, you have to give him some lessons. Let's get the ball rolling on that.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
and last one for you. Your brother Herbert is going through a bit of a rough streak in his own right. What was it like watching his last fight? Because usually you're in his corner, but I know you've been in camp and you didn't want to travel all the way across the world to corner him, I imagine, while you're in camp. What's it
Yeah.
like sitting at home and watching Herbert struggle in a fight like that in that way?
Was a hard fight. You know, Herbert's been on a very tough moment. You know, he had like two bad surgeries in the last like 3 years. Two, just those surgeries was a year off each surgery. You know, so that for sure messed up with his confidence a little bit. And he still have an amazing jiu-jitsu. He still want to compete in MMA. I'm not. I'm almost sure he's gonna get cut from the UFC. but he said he still want to fight. He's kind of like healing up a couple injuries, and then he's gonna be back in the gym, grappling a lot more at the beginning, but back with MMA was tough. But I knew it was gonna be a hard fight. That guy Jack Jenkins, he's a tough one. Good boxing, hits hard, good calf kicks, a warrior, you know. And then I knew it was gonna be a tough fight. I was just hoping he go out there and let that was my conversation. You know, I know his confidence wasn't there, and then we had that conversation before the fight. Say when you go there, make sure you let everything in there. You know, if he's meant to be your last fight, at least give everything. You know, so and then he tried a couple of times. You know, he fought hard, but I think Jack Jenkins was too much for him, especially the moment that he had right now. But he's in a good spirit, you know. He's gonna go back, heal some injuries, go back to grappling. I think that's where his roots are from. We need to bring that confidence back with him grappling. You know, go do a lot of tournaments. You have so many super fights right now, a couple of tournaments. Do like 5 to 10, get a lot of fights, get the win, get the confidence back with the winning results, and then eventually we put him in the maybe I don't know LFA, a couple small organizations to kind of build that win again, and maybe get him on a big event later.
Yeah, I mean, they always say winning solves everything in combat sports. So do you think that that's kind of the mental barrier for him? Is like he needs to go back to his bread and butter, get some wins under his belt, and build his confidence back up that way?
I do believe because, like I said, he had those surgeries breaking. You know, he was 1 year without fighting. Then whenever he was healing and getting back after a year, that knee was bad again. He needed another surgery for sure. And he tried to fight. That's when he lost in New York and the knee was out of place again. Then another surgery, another ear. And then whenever he was coming back, then the shoulder was getting out of the place all the time. So he fought and it was just like too much on his head, you know. And then financial problems too that was helping him out. Then eventually he opened up his gym. He's doing very good right now, but it was just a lot at once, you know, injuries and then financial problems and then a couple relationships that didn't went good too was a lot at once for him to take that on. So I was trying to help around, but it wasn't an easy job for me. But now, even though now he's probably gonna be cut from the UFC, he's in the good spirits. You know that's the most important. Now, I think he's about to rebuild. You know, and like you said, get those wins. Go get those wins on the grappling matches. Go get back to a competition, and then eventually go back to MMA.
All right, well, we're wishing him all the best here. Hopefully, he's able to get those wins under his belt and return to form because we know what he's capable of. I'm sure you, of course, always see what he's capable of. So we look forward to that, and we always look forward to watching you compete. It's the main event this Saturday at the Apex. Yourself, Sean Brady, big stakes in the welterweight division. Appreciate you doing this, Gilbert.
Thank you, brother. My pleasure.
It's the first UFC main event for Sean Brady, and I've got to say, the idea of getting into a cage with you or Gilbert Burns for 5 rounds, I mean, that sounds like one heck of a challenge. But I know Gilbert's somebody that you admire very much, so I'm wondering what your mood is like going into a fight that I think is going to be particularly challenging again for both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Gilbert. I've been watching Gilbert for years. I think we have very similar styles, so it's going to be fun to go in there and solve some problems. You know, it's like I said, Gilbert's fought for the belt. He's been around forever, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to testing myself against him.
I heard Damon Martin from MMA Fighting. He was interviewing your opponent and mentioned to Gilbert that one of his favorite fights was Demian Maia against Jake Shields because it was like they were such great grapplers. Now, I think that's a pretty bad comparison personally because I think that you and Gilbert are phenomenal strikers, whereas those guys, the striking was a little bit
Yeah.
more rudimentary. I think that we're in for a treat wherever this fight goes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Gilbert's proved that he has really good striking on the feet. He hits hard, kicks hard, but I feel like I've showed a little bit of my striking, but not too much of it. I think a lot more of it's going to come out in this fight. And yeah, I think whether it's in the open against the cage or on the ground, it's going to be a very exciting fight back and forth.
And I think the world of both of you guys as fighters. And I think one thing that I took away from looking into this fight and studying you guys was you guys have both kind of been caught. Like you got caught by Bilal Muhammad. He got caught in that last fight by Jack Della Maddalena. When you fought Gastelum, you caught Gastelum. Like I know
Yeah.
that the three of you are better than what we saw from you on that night. But what do you
Yeah.
learn from a situation like that where you're kind of cruising, you're looking good, and then suddenly the fight's over?
Yeah. For me, like I remember to this day, I remember getting hit with that punch. I was I was wide awake, never got dropped. I remember looking at my opponent, and I knew the bell was coming soon. It was my fault. I didn't throw, and I should have just threw a couple punches, and or just did something to show that I was still in the fight. But mentally, I think I checked out. And since that fight, I've done a lot of mental skills and like just working on my mind and working on my sports psych with a couple coaches. And yeah, I just feel like you just have to, you get hit and you got to deviate and come right back on track. It's a straight line. You get knocked off of it, you just get back on it and just keep going. And that's what I've learned the most. I trained so hard for this fight, and anytime something didn't go my way in camp, I just got right back in it and just stayed focused on the task at hand. There's gonna be bumps in the road, but if you know where the roadmap is going and you know the plan, and you stick to it, it's gonna get you to where you're going.
So going back to your fight with Gastelum, when you catch him in that moment and you win that fight really quite easily, probably a lot easier than you thought you were going to win that fight, because Gastelum's one heck of a fighter.
Mhm.
How do you feel for Kelvin in that moment? Like, do you feel like bad for him that that you're able to that you were able to beat him in that sort of fashion? Because you saw the look of disappointment and resignation on his face after
Yeah.
that fight.
No, I don't feel bad for him because a lot of people going into that fight coming off the Bilal fight. Obviously, Bilal's the champion now, so it doesn't look as bad. But a lot of people were saying how much I sucked as a fighter, this and that. So it felt good for me to get in there and just show how good I am. Because same thing with that fight. I trained so hard for that fight. I watched Kelvin knock out so many guys, and I was ready for it. And I went in there and I dominated him. And yeah, I plan on doing the same thing Saturday night.
I want to dive into something you talked about with Joe Pyfer on your podcast. You had mentioned that you thought that Joe Pyfer could beat either Caio Borralho or Jared Cannonier if those versions of them showed up to face Joe Pyfer on that night, and people gave you all kinds of blowback. But fighters,
No, so we no,
okay,
no, we weren't
am I off on
talking
that? Go
not
ahead.
that. Yeah, we were talking about the champion. I was talking about we talked.
Oh, you were talking
I
about
was about
Izzy and
Izzy.
Drakus. Okay.
Yes, 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 yes. I think, and I think Joey knows it too. Kyle Bahio is like probably a very tough fight for Joey. I think they would be a really good fight for each other. And same thing with Jared Cannonier. We were talking about the championship fight because we were recapping that, and I still stand by that. Like when Joey's on, I don't think Izzy looked at the greatest there, and I don't think Drakus looked the greatest there. So yeah, I still stand by that statement. But yeah, it wasn't Cannonier and
Okay.
Kaio.
Yeah, because my wires got crossed because you were recapping that event and that came up. But either way,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah,
think that
yeah.
this point still stands. Like fighters need to believe this, right? Like this isn't the thing where
Yes.
if people call fighters out for saying, "Oh, you're delusional, you're out of your mind." Like fighters need to have a degree of like. What do you think? This is I guess the bigger question that comes from me that I was thinking about today is like, what's the line between really high confidence and delusion in a fighter? Like, it's a tough question to answer, but like, what is the line there in your opinion?
Some guys don't know how to balance it, and some guys are so delusional that they don't have the skills or the tech, like they don't have the actual attributes to back it up. And then you have guys who are so good that they don't have that self-belief in themselves, and that's where you have to ride that middle. You have to believe in yourself, but not get too far ahead of yourself, So that's where I kind of like to stay. Like, I think I can beat anybody in the world, but I don't want to go out there and be talking about it the entire time. I just want to go out there and prove it to myself. I know I have the skills. I have the belief in myself now. Now you just have to go do it. Where I feel like a lot of guys, they just go out there and they talk about it, and you're gonna get shit on a little bit.
Like, what would you say? Like, what could you say as a fighter that you would say is delusional? Like, if what would you say about yourself? Like, if you said like I can beat John Jones in a fight, like a heavyweight version of John Jones, is that delusional to say that, or is that self belief?
That's self belief, yeah. I mean, I think if I lock my arms around anybody's neck, I can put them to sleep. So it would be like I could beat up Bengal tiger or something. Like that's you're delusional. I think any man that walks this earth, if I get the right choke or position on them, I can beat them. But yeah, then when you start talking about, but then you have guys who never fought before, and they say all they need is one punch, and they would knock out Cyril Gahn or John Jones. It's
No, they
like,
just
come
need to
on,
take
bro.
Cyril Gahn down, right? That's all they need to do. They just need to train wrestling
Yeah,
for a couple weeks. They'll beat him.
I wrestled in middle school. I'm going to take down Cyril Gahn and choke him. Like, no, you're not. So,
Yeah, because I always wonder what like the line is there because I actually believe that like when you say that about Joe Pyfer, that you believe that you train with this guy every day, you watch him train
Yep.
every day.
Yep.
Like I know that in your heart of hearts, you believe that Joe believes that, and I don't think that
Yep.
that's like an irrational thought to have. Like I think that fighters need to have that sort of mindset if they're going to become champions.
Yeah, you have to. This is a crazy sport, and if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to get very far. You have to believe in yourself. No one's going to believe in you more than you're going to believe in yourself, you know? So you just have to go out there and prove it.
Now, here's my other question for you about Gilbert Burns and grappling. Like you guys are both great grapplers. I think two of the better grapplers in the welterweight division. Do you believe that if Gilbert's on his back, that he's a lot less of a threat on the ground? Like if you're grappling with him, you've got top control. Do you think that Gilbert does not have as much of an arsenal as a lot of other fighters that are really high level jiu-jitsu practitioners that have moved over to MMA, and that's kind of been one of the things that we haven't really seen from him, as a fighter, is that the ability to get submissions off of his back and things like. Obviously, he's great at sweeping.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking like when he's on bottom, he's just looking to sometimes get leg entanglement and sweep you. You know, he's always spazzing to get underneath of you. But yeah, I mean, he's not like you never see him like hitting triangles because he's usually not in that position, right? So I'm sure he has that game off his back. We just never seen it. But I also have that game too, you know. And if you're a good jujitsu practitioner, you should be good off your back. You should be good on top. You should be well rounded. And Gilbert's definitely well rounded. But so am I.
And how excited are you to potentially test yourself against somebody? Like a lot of people, when they talk about
Yeah.
Gilbert Burns, they say that he is one of the guys that has really done an incredible job of adapting high-level jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's a world champion to mixed martial arts, and you get to test yourself potentially against him in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it a lot. It's funny though, if you look at Gilbert's record, he has a good amount of submissions, but not like an insane amount of submissions. You know, his last submission was Neil Magny, and then before that, it was a little while. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how I stack up against him. And I always want to go against the best guys, and Gilbert's one of the best in the division, grappling and MMA, and I'm looking forward to testing myself.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to this fight. I think it's, again, two of the best guys in what I think is a very, very stacked welterweight division. Is this Saturday. It's UFC Fight Night at the Apex yourself. First UFC main event for Sean Brady against Gilbert Burns.
Yes,
Can't
sir.
wait to see it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate it.
The second fight week in 5 months for Kyle Nelson, but more importantly, second fight week for your son Knox, who's 5 months old. Second fight week in 5 months. I mean, you're a pretty brave guy for bringing your baby with you to all of these events.
Yeah. I mean, he's been great so far. So yeah, we love having him with us.
Well, you have a new opponent this weekend in Steve Garcia, and it seems like a lot of people are asking about the Calvin Kattar fight that fell through the cracks. Now, I've met you and spoken to you many times, and you're about as laid back of a guy in the fight game outside of the cage as I've met. Does that kind of thing bother you? I mean, you have a really good opportunity to get into the rankings, and unfortunately, that fight's not going to happen just yet. How do you react when you find that out?
Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting fight. It was definitely wasn't a fight I was expecting to get a top 15 opponent. So when the UFC offered it to me, I was like, that's awesome. That's great. I jumped on it, but I definitely wasn't expecting it. And then it got pushed back once, and then Kattar had to pull out. Now we've switched to Steve Garcia, who I think is going to be just as tough of an opponent, just maybe a little less publicity because he's not in the top 15. But yeah, I mean, UFC said, "Do I want to fight Steve?" And I didn't really know who he was off the top of my head, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I had some time to check some tape on him and stuff. Then I kind of remembered seeing him fight and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a good fight.
Well, I find your fight style, you're kind of like a chameleon. Like you can really adapt to whoever your opponent is. I think that's one of the better traits that you have as a fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, I find my defense is so good that I'm able to figure my opponents out. It's if you don't have like a solid defense to kind of rely on, then you have to go right with your first game plan. There's no time to adjust or anything, especially with a guy like Steve Garcia, who's going to probably come on pretty strong. So I'm confident in my defense, and again, that gives me a little bit of extra time to read people and figure them out.
And what sort of adjustments do you have to make? You've got a guy who's kind of a tactician, a surgeon in Calvin Kattar, who will kind of try to methodically take you apart, versus a guy like Steve Garcia, who just flies out of the gate like he's shot out of a cannon. I mean, what sort of adjustments do you make given the short notice opponent change?
Yeah, so again, they were both more so strikers. Just, yeah, Steve's going to be a little bit more wild, a lot more aggressive. Cater was, very straight punches, like a great 1-2, and very methodical. So, I mean, we've trained this whole training camp. I mean, we always add in our jiu-jitsu and our wrestling, but for the most part, we're getting ready for a striking battle. And so it's not that big of a change. Now, Steve is also, he fights southpaw, so that's a bit of a switch up. But again, I've been working on so many kind of southpaw tricks that I haven't got to use a whole lot yet. So I'm excited to try some of that out. So yeah, it was really just getting, switching it up from an orthodox to a southpaw, and then just preparing a little bit more for wider shots than straight down the center.
What sort of experience do you have facing southpaws?
So, like Bill Aljo, he switched southpaw a little bit in my last fight, but nowadays a lot of guys are, they'll switch south and they'll switch orthodox, and so training a lot with a bunch of guys like that allows me to make quick adjustments from, southpaw to orthodox. But yeah, like my training partners in this training camp have, stepped up and helped me out a lot with that. It was like Mike Malott's great at going southpaw. Kevin Popowick helped me out a lot. This training camp, he's taller, similar to Garcia, and he's really good at southpaw as well. So yeah, a couple of great guys to help mimic my opponent.
Do you prefer a more aggressive opponent? I feel like historically you fared very well against opponents that like to push the agenda on you.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. Again, like I said, because my defense I find is so strong. But yeah, it was kind of similar with Bill Aljo. Like Bill Aljo was very tough. I was expecting him to move around a little bit more. But, he came into the pocket and hung out with me there, and we saw what happened. So I think we'll see something similar with Steve. He's probably going to come forward aggressive. I'm going to touch him, and he's either going to kind of recognize the power and start to move around a little bit more on the outside, or I'm going to hurt him early with the power and put him away.
Are you hoping to fight again this year? I mean, November 2nd, they're in Edmonton, but that card's pretty full at the moment. I think there's 11 or 12 fights already on that card. Are you hoping to get another one in?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I put something, a special show on this Saturday. Maybe Dana can make some room for me on November 2nd.
Well, I hope that that's what takes place. We always enjoy watching you fight, and I hope that fight against Calvin Kattar comes together. He has been training in Canada, from what I understand, a little bit, so yeah, maybe we can treat him like a Canadian and put two Canadians on that card in Edmonton. Appreciate you doing this, Kyle. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you fight Steve Garcia this Saturday.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, and we'll talk soon.